This week on RQ the podcast, we're talking about Misery.
Whoa.
What?
Ara,
Yes?
what are you doing? We've already talked about this.
What?
We've already done the cold open. We've already done everything. We've talked about the entire episode already. What are you doing?
The hell's a cold open?
Actually, I don't know what it is. I just know that we tend to put them at the beginning of each episode, and then we go cue the intro music.
Oh, you mean so like
all that stuff?
A little bit to draw the audience in, to get them to watch.
I guess that's what it is.
The show.
Yeah, we get them to draw them in. Hey folks, welcome to RQ the podcast, where we Ara and I will talk about our previous episodes of RQ, which was back then, it was actually called RE-quel.
We watch them so you don't have to.
That's correct.
Yeah, there we go.
We're trying to save you from the misery.
Yeah.
Oh, actually today we are going to talk about episode 8, which was Misery, or the New Year's special, which was
very long title. Yeah,
very long title.
A couple of parentheticals. There's a lot going on in that title, but
ooh, grammar. Okay,
it's basically the one that came after the holiday special where we the duo broke up.
This is the episode where Ara...
There is... YouTube needs a skip recap option right about here. Where can we just skip this recap?
So Ara...
It's not going to happen, but it would be nice.
Oh, of course. In the holiday episode, Ara was disappointed that he got a fidget spinner as a gift, whereas Andrew got 2 Rolex watches. Ara decided that he was going to hitchhike in this country. Can a man hitchhike in this country? Sure, but it's not that safe. Mm-hmm. And he was picked up by his biggest fan. So the biggest fan apparently took him to a cabin in the woods.
That's the recap. Here we go.
So this episode will start with Andrew and Ara back in the studio. And basically just trying to say... this is what happened, and Ara's like, hey, I've got a great idea for some story, and it's like, we've already talked about that. So,
and we're very much relying on the joke of I have no recollection of what happened, so we can really kind of build the narrative around that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it feels like a bizarre episode in a way, because we're not remaking Misery. You know, it's effectively taking your life. And I mean, I don't know how to really describe it other than, you know, if, let's say Big Trouble in Little China, it's like, well, what if Jack Burton goes over to China and becomes an Uber driver or something like that? It's like, what are we doing to actually make a sequel? What are we doing to make a prequel? It's kind of blurring the line between, you know, we're just the movie in real life, but it's not real life.
It's because... after you tell me everything that happened to me, which I don't remember, you're like, actually, yeah, it reminds me a lot of that movie Misery, right?
Right. And sort of meta in the way that we're taking it is to say like, oh, it reminds me of Misery, you know? So kind
of talk about
coming
that.
Backwards of saying like, oh, this thing that happened to us was just like this film, and oh, isn't that interesting?
In rewatching this, I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I'd really forgotten a lot about how much we had really done in this. I mean, it's about 8 minutes, right? So in rewatching it, I was like, wow, we really did a couple of different things, narratively speaking. Like, it opens with you recounting the story, in which we immediately switch to black and white, and then it goes to footage of me being captured and being bound and completely silent, just your voiceover, which we can talk about later. But to then the phone call, and then just tying everything together. So I think just because I forgot, it's one of those that just kind of gets forgotten about. It's one of those episodes, maybe because it was a holiday special one-off. I forgot about how much we tried to cram into one episode.
Well, I agree. For what it's worth, the videos that we had put out were attracting for us, like a good amount of views. This one in particular had lower views than the other ones had, and I thought I was like, oh no, that's unfortunate, because
Could be time of year as
it
well.
could be time of year. It could be just algorithms that YouTube is putting out there, figuring things out like that. But I just remember thinking that this was a good episode. I was proud of the episode because we had taken, we had shot that other footage of like me searching the cabin, right? Mm-hmm. Getting knocked out and just, getting away from just like sitting in the chairs and just, talking, the frame story basically, but mm-hmm. like moving away from that and just trying to have some fun with the narrative. And then it just didn't land very well. And I was a little bit bummed out. I liked the phone call that was in it. Mm-hmm. I thought it would do better. But maybe to your point, it just came out at a certain time of year. Maybe it wasn't. Yeah.
It was a couple days after the new year, so that's probably not a great day for engagement. I really liked the retelling stuff that we did. There was a lot of kind of nods to Last Crusade, especially in the stuff where we were tied up.
I'm sitting there and you say, can you reach into my left jacket pocket? And I say, what am I looking for? A lucky charm. And I say, that feels like a cigarette lighter.
I don't know, the black and white stuff looked good. And doing voiceover with us acting sans dialogue, I think like that's the kind of stuff that I'm always interested in, right? So that was fun. You retelling the story was done in real time and probably improvised, right? It was not written out.
It was not written, no.
So I don't know how many takes we did of that, but it's funny to hear your story start and how it kind of evolves and your delivery of it. Because by the end, it turns into a lot of like, and then you said, and then I said, and then you said, and it was like, I was like, that's funny because it started with you just giving a description of the events that happened, but then it turned into you having to deliver dialogue. Yeah. Which is very awkward for a narrator to have to do, which is, I guess, where I'm going for.
Sure.
So I noticed that in rewatching. I was like, wow, that must have been really difficult because you really were just narrating what we were saying, which is really interesting. And it went on for a bit, but I enjoyed it. It's like the first 2 minutes is that. It's the retelling.
Right. I already knew that I wanted it to be a parody of Last Crusade. Mm-hmm. So when we were sitting on our just the side to side, it was just like, we're going to go through this. We filmed all of that. And then we're like, all right, let's do the scene where like I'm coming through the door. I get knocked out. Like we filmed that second. And then it was a matter of like, all right, what are the lines that they said in Last Crusade? And then you say the part, I say the part. So we broke it up that way. But yes, it was that kind of, wanting to get those lines correct. But like that dialogue was already written. Like we both know Last Crusade pretty well. So mm-hmm. we could do those lines in our sleep. That meant that I wasn't as nervous about saying like, is it going to match up or not? I knew it would match up. Mm-hmm. So if I couldn't get the kind of show that I had wanted to back in, we talked about the holiday special about like, well, missed opportunity. I wanted it to be a show about, us talking about movies. Then maybe if I couldn't get that, maybe what we could do is just have a show where I reference things so many times that people are like, oh, well, we know what these movies are. Mm-hmm. So, he's making a reference to that.
We ended on the joke of we weren't really tied up. I wasn't really tied up to begin with. That was kind of how we got out of that one.
Yes. That was weird. That's like,
you're like, and then you tried to burn the ropes, but then you found out that you weren't really tied up to begin with.
Yeah, we weren't really tied up to begin with.
It was just to show how dumb our characters are, I guess.
Sure.
And an easy way to get out. Segue to the next scene, which is now that I've been brought up to speed with what has happened.
Yeah, we need to find someone to
we got to make this. We got to make this movie, and I have that joke. I was like, I've always wanted to find someone to play myself.
Right.
which is a nice, just kind of like egotistical joke. Like, yeah, I've always thought about who would play me in the motion picture. It changes, like you said. Like, we get a completely different tone and vibe from this point on, because then we go into our more grounded in reality.
Right. Well, there were a couple of things that we had done that were a callback to some of the earlier episodes that we did. One of them was the person who had kidnapped you was very upset about this hat budget not being in there, and it was just kind of like, okay,
that joke keeps going.
It's just never going to die. And the second thing is who's going to play you. And in our earlier episoes where we were saying, like, well, who could play this part? And we're like, oh, here's a list of actors that could do it. In this one, it was like, who was it? DiCaprio. Too whiny, Tobey Maguire.
Oh, I would actually play Spider-Man. So yes,
play Spider-Man.
I remember all of them.
Right. Well, there's Christoph Waltz in there.
Too German.
Too German.
Yeah. Then we do the yeah joke.
Yeah. But he's Austrian. And Clint Howard.
Too cute.
Finally settling on Michael Keaton, which was, I guess, it's kind of hard for me to remember exactly, but
I was gonna bring, it's like a happy accident. I don't know if this was, it couldn't have been intentional, because you found the most amazing photo of Michael Keaton wearing like almost the exact same outfit I was wearing from that episode.
Close, yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, this guy's perfect.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, and he had a lot of dialogue that we could lift. Either from interviews or movies, yes.
I mean, between Batman, Beetlejuice, we're like, this is a gold mine.
It's perfect. I will say that it went on a little long for the phone conversation. I knew that I wanted the one from Beetlejuice about, my qualifications.
So you knew there were certain lines he had said which we could build conversations around.
Exactly.
So that was super helpful.
Before we get into this, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. What are some of your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see
Mr.
it.
Keaton,
Now, what do you think?
hey,
I mean,
I'm really gonna have to get to know you guys. We gotta get closer. Move in with you for a while. Get to be real pals.
I live in a studio apartment, sir, but maybe you could stay with Andrew.
Sure.
I think we might have to go into a different direction.
What do you want me to do?
Like Val Kilmer.
Come on, kid. What do I have to do to strike a deal with you two, huh?
I don't think there's anything you can do to strike a deal with us.
You bunch of losers!
It was helpful, but then it was a matter of, maybe too much of a good thing. Whereas, like, well, let me just put all of it in there. Whereas, when he was on hold and he was doing his, it was from Beetlejuice when he was just doing that commercial, like, it's like we probably could have trimmed it by about 15 seconds. I mean, it was a long phone call.
For sure. But I think it served its purpose in that we found a guy that was too crazy even for you, and who I thought was perfect, but agree to disagree, as they say.
Of course.
We decided to go in a different direction. Actually, I think we made the right choice, whether or not it was conscious or otherwise, to really just kind of forego explaining how we got back together and just started with us back together.
Yeah.
We didn't dwell on that. It's
Yeah.
like, Ara stormed off in the last episode angry, and now we're starting this episode with us back together already. And let's explain what happened. So I think that actually helped us, as opposed to having to kind of drawing it out and be like, I think we were just being lazy. We're like, let's just start together again, and then we'll explain it all in post, like that kind of deal.
But in a pretty easy way to think about it, it's like, it's just like
we don't
have to go into the psychology of it.
No, we just
it's like you got upset.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't necessarily upset with me. You were upset with, like, the higher ups.
Sure.
You were upset with the situation.
Yeah, we didn't dwell on it. We just we went right for it.
We have gone down storylines and just like, let's course correct. Let's move on. Let's just put it back on the path that we want. We don't have to worry about that. We will get to that later when, to your end, B story becomes the A story, and A story, A?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
So, all right. So like what we had done the last time in talking about where you would put the holiday episode in comparison to other episodes. I know you had said that the holiday episode you liked more than the Halloween episode. I feel like Halloween was
I like this better than the holiday episode for sure. This is definitely better than the holiday episode.
I think in terms overall,
and I didn't remember that.
You didn't remember?
I didn't remember feeling. I don't remember feeling that this episode was better. But now in seeing it again, I'm like, this is definitely better than the holiday episode.
This episode did a number of things that I think worked. It got us out of the parameters of just sitting in the chairs the entire time, even though we are sitting mostly here. But it put you in the green screen, like flagging down, a ride, hitchhiking. It put us in that cabin, a little adventure. It's very minor, but a little adventure, a little bit of creepiness. Then it was ultimately just a comedic story with a phone call that I think slightly trimmed down would have been a little bit more solid. But overall, it was a good. I think it was a good episode to just kind of get us into the new year and set us off on the trajectory that we would go on for the rest of the season. A good midway point, even though it's a little half past midway. But yeah, I think that this was. It felt more assured. It felt like I was in more control of. Just like taking material, planning for material, putting the material on there. It
was just very well rounded, I guess, from a story sensibility. It was like we had certain things that we hit and then callbacks, and then it all wrapped up nicely, which is, I guess, why I was pleasantly surprised in rewatching it. I was like, that was actually, structure-wise, it wasn't too bad. Obviously, it's one of those where I think the idea was better than the execution, but overall I really enjoyed it. I think so far it's my favorite one we've watched again. So that's what I will say. It's a good episode. I would venture to say almost a great episode. I don't think we're into great territory yet.
No.
But in rewatching it, I was surprised, A, by how little I remembered, and B, how it may be my favorite so far. Out of the 7 or 8 we've watched, I think it's my favorite, but who knows?
I would call it technically put together well. But it doesn't have some of the charm, as I say, the Princess Bride episode, or doesn't have the charm of the My Cousin Vinny episode to me. Like there is a reason that I go back.
Very much a standalone.
It is. And it's kind of like, this is where we could go. And here's a template for it. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how well it held up.
Yeah.
And
same.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, that is RQ episode 8, where we talked about Misery, or the New Year's special.
Yep.
Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's getting the endorsement from both of us, which is something that we haven't always done.
No.
But it's a hell of a lot better than movies on tape, I'll tell you that. Sore spot. So anyway, Ara, I think that's probably going to do it.
As we say here at Honey Wagon, we'll see you at the cinema.
We'll we never say that. Bye.
All right. Let's just see what happens.
Great.
In 3, 2. This week on RQ the podcast, we're talking about the holiday special.
Start with Misery or Misery.
It's
or
not the New Year's
special.
It's the New Year's special or Misery.
No, it's Misery or the New Year's special.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 3, 2. This week on RE-quel, we're talking about... Wait, hold on. In 3, 2. This week on RQ the podcast, we're talking about Misery or... What?
Did you forget that we just talked about this entire episode already?
Yes.
Oh my God. So you... Oh, if I understand you correctly...
Let's do it one more time.
Sure.
I wasn't moving my hands enough. I realized. Okay. Okay.
Did you forget?
I forgot to move my hands. In 3, 2. This week on RQ the podcast, we're talking about Misery, or
Whoa,
the New Year.
Whoa. Ara,
What?
did you? What do you mean? What did you entirely forget that we had already talked about all this?
Yes. We'll do it one more time. You know,
Let's be done with our cold open.
look. Do you know what a locomotive is?
I've heard of it. An unstoppable force.
The derailment train is so strong today.
Yeah.
I love it. The
All
derailment train is a thing now.
I think we've got
Invented today.
I think we got our cold open.
It's the little train that could.
I'll bring it up. I don't
Derailment
care.
train is just out of control.
Choo choo.
Choo choo. Like I said, choo choo. Derailment train is here. Okay, let's try this again. This week on RQ the podcast, we're talking about Misery, or the new.
Whoa. Ara,
What?
what? Did you forget that I've already talked about this entire thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Fine.
Did you forget
This week on art. And scene.